And this meeting has been duly called and that its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Do we have any community input? No community input. So I guess we will go straight into closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001, concerning purposes permitted by the Act, including A, 551.071, consultation with attorney, B, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, C, 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an employee. And we will move into closed session. And at 5:03, I call us back into open session. And I will ask if there's a motion for item A.
Mr. President,
Dr. DuPont?
I move to accept the Human Resources report as presented.
And thank you for that motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. And is there any comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. And the motion carries unanimously. 5-0. Moving on to item B. Do I have a motion? Oh,
If you'd like, you can do a motion and then do the presentation, or a presentation and then the motion, whatever the board preference is.
Presentation and motion.
presentation and motion. Okay. We'll
So-
go ahead and do the
Sounds good.
presentation. I didn't want to steal your thunder.
So we started in July at the team building workshop discussing priorities, some key priorities for the year. We shared some potential priorities that staff had developed, and the feedback that the board provided in July was very helpful in focusing our work. And then last month, we provided draft superintendent targets relating to key priorities. And this evening, we returned with with proposed superintendent targets that have been revised based on input that you all gave, mainly about having additional quantitative targets. And so you'll see that we have utilized that feedback in revising these proposed superintendent targets. And while I have a brief presentation, I'll note that you all have 3 documents relating to this. One is the revised superintendent targets themselves, and then the 2 other documents include some baseline information relating to mental health check-ins, and also an audit plan relating to exclusions, COVID-19 exclusion practices for students and staff. So I'd like to specifically highlight the specific additional quantitative targets that are included, and they're included in the effectiveness metrics column. And so you'll see when we get to the targets on the health and safety priority that there's a quantitative target related to the consistency of COVID-19 exclusion practices. And there's also a quantitative target relating to counselor check-ins pertaining to social, emotional, and/or mental wellness. And also the literacy development priority has a quantitative target in the effectiveness metric related to the use of instructional practices based on the science of teaching reading. And then finally, the engaging first-time instruction priority has a quantitative target related to the use of instructional strategies pertaining to personalized learning. And then there's also, this is a revision, it's not a quantitative target that's specified, but there's a reference to a formative program gauge pertaining to professional learning communities. So I also would like to remind you all that in terms of guiding documents, the superintendent targets play one role, but the strategic plan more broadly and also the community-based accountability report also serve as key documents to guide both work at the district level and also the school level. And just to do a slight quick deeper dive on community-based accountability, just to remind you that our work in that area we've articulated. I say we because I've been able to join the work that you all have been doing for years, but you all have articulated and I joined then in a focus on the accountability pillars that are set forth on this slide here. And so you see student learning and progress, student readiness, and reading across the various pillars. And I'd like to do a deep dive on one of those areas specifically, and that is the student readiness pillar. And you see that this slide lists examples of quantitative measures pertaining to a variety of student performance areas. So I just wanted to lift that up as an example of one of the pillars within community-based accountability system that provides guidance to our work at the school and district level. So let me go ahead and transition to the revision of the proposed targets. And we're not going to give a comprehensive overview this evening since we did that at the last meeting, but really just pointing out the differences. So again, if you look at the effectiveness metric for health and safety, specifically relating to mitigation strategies, you see that it still retains the language referring to observations in classrooms, but then there's a reference to ongoing audits beginning with exclusions of staff and students on September 20th, and indicating that at least 90% of those reviewed exclusions would fall in accordance with our district parameters, which are based on state guidance as well. And the exclusions consistency is important. It's important we get this right on both ends. We do not want to under-exclude. So if the situation calls for an exclusion, that needs to happen. But we also don't want to over-exclude. And with the number of people involved in making decisions on that, we want to have this. We want to have this metric in place. So the other aspect of the health and safety priority area where we're changing is to articulate a ratio or a quantity of the number of visits that will occur with a social, emotional, and or mental wellness focus or component. So each secondary student would have a visit with a counselor during this school year that includes a check-in in that area. And at the secondary and elementary levels, the average number of student visits, and I want to emphasize average, with the counselor that include a check-in regarding social, emotional, and or mental wellness would be 3 at the secondary level and 1 at the elementary level. So next in terms of the priority area pertaining to literacy development, you see that we've added a specific percentage of classroom walkthrough visits from January through March that would indicate that the science of teaching reading is being applied. And that's in addition to the fidelity metric pertaining to 95% K-1 teachers that participated in completed reading academies. We're already tracking that, and we're well on our way to exceeding that in terms of expectations so far with the Reading Academy. And so in terms of engaging first time in instruction. Really, it's a growth focus in terms of walkthrough data and perceptual survey data pertaining to high-quality professional learning. And then what's added in terms of professional learning communities is a program gauge. So the Office of Assessment and Accountability, did I get the order right? Assessment and Evaluation would conduct a formative program gauge that would include focus groups and reviewing PLC agendas in order to yield qualitative observations. And really this is about improvement, is what the purpose of that program gauge is, to continue to improve our work in this area. And then finally, there are no changes to the proposed superintendent target in the area of budget planning. And that concludes the overview this evening of the revisions made in response to trustee feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Are there any questions? Anybody have any questions? No?
I don't have questions, but I do have a couple of comments. I actually do have one question related to the audit procedures that were included for the mitigation strategies. And I was just wondering whether that the field work information that's included in this, whether it might include addressing areas where there were specific examples or questions that maybe came forward at some point, either to the board or to the district, where, like right now it appears that it's more like it'll be randomly selected, some situations to look at, some schools to look at, or nurses to look at. So I guess I'm just wondering whether potentially as part of that, it could include areas where there may have been specific issues that came up during the course of the year.
Sure, absolutely. Now, we want to be careful about not being just problem-focused in the sense that it doesn't end up being representative, but we don't want to get caught up into, let's have the perfect methodology. We want to improve, and so it makes sense if we've heard some concerns or question asked to be taking a look at that. We don't want to just do that. We want to cast a wider net, because at the end of the day, it's going to be about what's going to be the best approach to getting that consistency we want, and taking a look at situations brought to our attention make a difference. Now, the date of September 20th is not accidental. It's about a week after we had refined procedures, and we feel like we were at a better spot as of September 20th. It's still important that we remain focused on it, but it's not looking at some of the issues in the beginning of the year may have been related to rapidly evolving TEA guidance, and also we needed to get to a better point in terms of, okay, team, this is our expectations for what our protocol is, and we feel like as of September 20th, we were in a better position.
Okay, and then just trying to think through all of it in my own mind too. I want to go back and I don't necessarily think that I said it in the workshop when we discussed this or the last time, but I think that I want to note that delineation of the three types of metrics, the fidelity, the effectiveness, and the impact. I think that does a lot for us. I think in the past we focused a lot on fidelity. If I go back 8 years myself to when I came on the board, I think we were very focused on fidelity. And through time, we moved through that and tried to include more. And as I'm sitting here thinking today, as you were talking, Dr. Williams, it seems like what we've also done sometimes is try to we have those fidelity metrics and the superintendent targets, but then we have impact metrics that we look at for other reasons, CBAS or whatever it is, just to look at student performance. And I think that we miss that middle piece of how do you get those impact metrics to happen? Because what it means is that people everybody in the system needs to be doing something along those effectiveness metrics if you're going to actually make something happen in the impact, if you're going to actually see something there. So I think, that's a huge thing to take into, and even how we think, how we thought about it as trustees and about the superintendent targets and everything. So I appreciate that, those three areas of kind of metrics. And I know it's uncomfortable, some of that, because we haven't always done that, but I think all of those will evolve through time also, just as they have already. And I think that's good. It's a good thing, and that they'll evolve and help us do a better job of putting together the superintendent targets and using them. I drew a little picture of myself. I still need to think about, I think, the interaction of the three, the CBAS, the strategic plan, and the superintendent targets. Because I have to resolve in my mind that really the strategic plan, I think, is the big thing, the thing that we're trying to implement, the thing that people put together and said, this is what we're going to do, and this is where we want to get. And then and how you do that, the CBAS has kind of helped us figure out whether we are getting there and what is happening, including the community input. And then the superintendent targets is also how we're driving that strategic plan through the organization. So I think I'm trying to deal with that in my own mind too, how all of those things fit together. But I think it has something to do with the whole, with how we use the superintendent targets and how we make them work the way that I think we want them to work. So I completely understand in terms of, so I think it's important, and I'm really happy that we're thinking about these other types of metrics and how they all fit together. And I think we all need to realize we may not still have we probably don't have the perfect metrics, but there's enough to give us something. I think it's hard to realize that we need to have something to look at so that we can let you go and make all this stuff happen through everybody else in the organization too. And I think that's hard, but I think at the last workshop, I think she used the word safe enough to try. And I think that's what we need to do. We just take it and go, and it's going to evolve, and that's a good thing, and give everybody the space to do the work and get it done. So that's been me looking at it, going through it in my own mind too, and I think we've gone through an evolution already, and we're going to continue to do that. So I appreciate that look on things. And I also, the one other thing that's somewhat related to that, I think, is that, and it's more on the board, I don't think we can just expect to set these superintendent targets and then we'll look at them a year out or even look at them at 6 months out and expect to be just looking at some numbers here that we've defined in terms of metrics. I think there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on, and I think it's important for us to realize that every week when we read the Friday report, the things that happen in that Friday report are what's making all of the action happen to actually make something happen in terms of the metrics. And I went back to this last week's Friday report, and the Department of C&I having leaders go out into classrooms and actually evaluate what's going on, or look at what's going on, not even evaluate, just do walkthroughs and see what's going on. Dr. Silva and Ms. Hughes leading curriculum leaders through conversations to support the action plan for literacy development. And then it's talked about the Office of Evaluation and Assessment presenting relative to the CBAR, doing a presentation at a conference. So I think always there's all of these things going on, and sometimes it's hard as a trustee to remember that all of that's going on, because, you know, obviously we want to see the results from it, but we don't know all those things that are happening every single day. And so I think it is important, I mean, it's a reminder to me just to go back in and make sure that I really look at the Friday report and see everything that's happening and think about how that relates back to the superintendent targets that we're watching. And I appreciate in the Friday report how that's been made even easier for us, tying it into specific targets and things. So I think all of that helps all of us understand it all more and kind of keep track of things, and it is super important because so many, you know, it's easy when you have these things on the page that for it to become just a number, or you're looking for a trend, or you're looking for a number or whatever, but really everything that's happening here is about kids, and it can't just be about a number there on paper. So I think even, you know, even if I look at that first health and safety area, there's so many things around even the mental health resources and supports, and you know, obviously there's numbers here in terms of counselors and what they're doing, but in my mind, we can't make any of this happen if it's not happening in every classroom, every part of the organization, everywhere. And yes, maybe that will, hopefully it will show up in the metrics that we've chosen, and even in the impact metrics in that case, but it's about what everybody in this district is doing with children every single day in the classroom. And I think, you know, when we key into, we need to have metrics, we need to look at it, but we also need to remember why we're doing all this and what the important stuff is. So my long-winded way of saying I appreciate the things that have been done in this, and you know, I know we always demand things in terms of the metrics, and I think that is important, but I think all of that put together helps us all evolve forward looking at all this too.
Maybe just a quick comment. I think these are greatly improved from the past workshop that we discussed, so I really do appreciate the addition of some of these quantitative metrics. I really think what is more important about what we're doing today is not so much the targets themselves as the process. And I think I was part of the superintendent target setting process when I first became a board member. Then we had our 2 years of chaos, and I guess our 2 weeks to stop the spread that ended up lasting 18 months. And so the norms we are establishing this year need to be looked at as what we're going to do going forward. I mean, we can't go back to adopting a new process every single year and new metrics. I think if we find a survey metric that we use this year, it needs to be safe enough to try, but with an eye toward that's going to be the one we use for the next 5 years. This process of setting targets, I think this year kind of is going to be our trial period to see if it's been successful, and if it is, we stick with it for a while. I think that kind of stability is something that we all need to be aggressive about reestablishing because it builds our strategic capacity in a way that we haven't had in the last couple of years. So I really support this effort. I also think the appraisal process will be a huge step forward as well, and I'm excited about this, and I look forward to kind of seeing the results as the year goes on.
Thank you both, Dr. DuPont and Mr. Bowman. Mr. Larson.
I think a lot of what I was going to say has already just been said, but I wanted to say I was very pleased when I saw the updates come out. The level of responsiveness to the issues we raised during the last workshop was just amazing. This is definitely a huge step in the right direction, and personally I feel much, much better about where we're at today.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Ms. Spence? Good. I just wanted to echo what some of my fellow trustees have said. When you were talking, Dr. DuPont, it made me reflect back on when we were doing the superintendent search and things of that nature. And one of the things that you had actually said, Dr. Williams, probably don't remember it, but it had a lasting impact on the way I felt when you said it doesn't have to be perfect for us to try. And so, you know, I'm pleased with the superintendent targets, and as Mr. Bowen said, the appraisal process. I think having something in place that gives us a benchmark and a jumping off point will help for future trustees, you know, down the road, and having that, you know, that foresight, I think, is important. So I just wanted to mention that because Dr. DuPont made me think about that. So those were my comments on it, but if there's no other comments, I will call for a motion.
Mr. President?
Mr. Bowen?
I move that we adopt the 2021-2022 superintendent targets as presented.
Thank you, Mr.
Second
Bowen.
that.
Second by Mr. Larson. And any other comments? Seeing no comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And motion carries unanimously. And seeing no further business before the board, I will adjourn us at 5:29.